Welcome to another episode of Lessons Learned. I'm Buttons Padine for UK Sailmakers, and today I've got a special treat in store. I'm calling it Adam and Jenni's Excellent Adventure. Say hello to UK Sailmakers General Manager Adam Loory.
Hey, Buttons.
Good to have you here with us today. What's special about Adam right now is that after 30 years at UK Sailmakers, he's about to retire. And with his wife, Jenni, they plan to sail from Long Island Sound in the northeast of the United States through the Panama Canal to the South Pacific and back. Adam, this is a huge undertaking for the two of you. Tell us how you got started on this journey.
Well, to start out with, I'm going to retire just a few months shy of 34 years of working at UK Sailmakers. Never thought I'd have a job that long, but I've been thinking about sailing around the world since I was 14, when I read Joshua Slocum and Robin Lee Graham and watched movies, and I've always wanted to do it. And I keep having to put off doing it. But I did get a good taste for sailing across the oceans when I got hired by USA Today to cover the America's Cup in Australia in 1986 and 87. And they said, kid, because I was a kid back then, we don't have a job for a boating writer after the America's Cup's over. Knowing that, I took my sailing gear with me when I went to Australia. And after the Cup was over in January of, 1987, I went looking to find a boat to sail home on. And I got really lucky that I found a couple from San Francisco who were really good sailors, and they were all racing sailors gone cruising. And they picked me because I was a racing sailor, because they didn't have roller furling and they didn't have, electric winches or an autopilot, and they sailed their boat, and they were looking for people that could help them sail their boat, not just float around.
And as a kid, they could send you to the pointy end to change the sails.
Yes, indeed.
Adam, take a second and give us the rundown of your offshore experience since coming back from Australia.
Well, I've done boat deliveries from the Caribbean to New York. I have done 8 Bermuda races. I have done 3 Caribbean 600s. I've done a Sydney Hobart, a Marblehead Halifax, 3 Chicago Max. And in the summer of 2000, Jenni and I rejoined my friends Jim and Diana Jesse on their boat Nalu 4, and we sailed from northern Japan to Dutch Harbor in Alaska.
It's quite an accomplished list there. Okay, so going forward now to your new excellent adventure, what is your plan in terms of timing, ports of call, that kind of stuff?
Well, to go back to quoting the Jessies, they had the best line, and that was, our plans are cast in jello. There's a lot of times you have to wait until the weather is right. So we were originally planning on leaving a year ago in the fall, but the boat wasn't ready, and Jenni wanted to work a little longer before we retired. So Jenni retires in June, I retire in April. And so the plan is to go race with our friend Rich DeMullen at Block Island Race Week. We'll bring the boat up to Block Island, and after race week, we'll sail to Maine and Canada and make that our shakedown sail. And then as the fall comes, we'll work our way back to New York. And I plan to go to my last UK Sailmakers managers meeting, which will be in New York. And then right after that, we'll set out south, because that's when the insurance company will let us head south of Norfolk. We can't sail south of Norfolk until after November 15th, because that's when they consider hurricane season ending. And that's when we'll decide whether we are going to go to the Caribbean or not, or whether we're just going to book it right to the Panama Canal. But we hope to be out of the Panama Canal by the end of January of 2024. So that we can get to the Marquesas, which is 3,000 miles away, before the big knot of boats that will be following us. Most people wait until cyclone season ends April 1st before they take off. But some of the reading I've been doing indicates that the Marquesas are north of the hurricane or the cyclone zone. So if you get an early jump, you can find a lot more secluded harbors without a lot of neighbors.
Well, that's great. And it's interesting because I'm looking at you over your left shoulder, the pictures of your two boats, each named SOULMATES. As I'm looking at you now, the one on the left was the Express 37 that you raced for a
Actually,
decade. But then if you look at the white Spinnaker with the red stripe, that's the
that's
current.
the current boat, the boat we're going to
What is
take
it?
to the South Pacific.
Let's go back to the start of your dream. I know for a long time, your first SOULMATE that you raced was an Express 37, and you sailed under the Burgess of both Huguenot Yacht Club and the Storm Trysail Club. But that's not the boat you're looking to sail to the South Pacific. Tell us about how you decided to buy the current SOULMATES.
Well, we've been sailing the Express for 17 years, and we raced it really hard, and we had a really good time. We made a lot of good friends sailing on that boat, and we were a little bit of a different boat. There were times that 50% of our crew were women, and that was so that Jenni would have a good time with friends. And we showed that we could do well no matter what the makeup of our crew was. We had some really good core people, and that made all the difference. But I realized every time I looked at trying to reconfigure the interior of the boat that there was no way it was going to have the storage space that we needed to go sailing across the ocean. So one day I saw a boat that was for sale, that had sailed around the world. It was built in New Zealand. It was a custom boat. It was out in San Francisco. And before I could get out there to take a look at it, it got sold. And at that point, something inside my brain snapped, and the Express 37 was not the boat for me anymore. And I was actively looking for a new boat. And this boat came along by chance. I found it on a website I'd never been to before. But it had been sitting for a while. It was designed by Roger Martin, built by the custom boat builder Eric Goetz as his own personal boat. And I'd always known that I needed to find a custom boat, because figuring that it was going to be better built than a production boat, and it would be strong enough that I wouldn't have to worry. And to buy a boat builder's boat, I knew doubly as well that it was going to be very strong, and there was no way that the boat builder was ever going to take any shortcuts on his own personal boat. And that's proven the case. The boat is really strong, it's really light, and it's really fast, and it's a joy to sail.
It's interesting because I've sailed on SOULMATES with you, and the cockpit, the original cockpit, was really configured for short-handed sailing, basically double-handed sailing. And for a decade or so, you've been racing it with a fully crewed afterguard there. So it was a little crowded at times, but when you and Jenni get off, it'll be a little bit better. But that's not the same boat as she is now.
No, we've done some modifications to make the boat more livable and to make it a little more comfortable. One of the things that I learned is that the cockpit of your boat when you're cruising is your living room, and you need to have a comfortable living room. So the boat, to make it easier for racing, had very, very low cockpit coamings. They were only 5 inches tall, and it was not really comfortable to sit on because they're pretty narrow. So we went back to Roger Martin, the boat's designer, and asked him about designing much taller cockpit coamings. And it was one of the last things Roger did, because he passed away before we had actually built them. And Ross Ween, his assistant and the designer working with him, finished the job for us. And now we have 13-inch tall cockpit coamings, and the winches are inset into the coamings so that they're a little bit lower and not up so high. And they're much more comfortable to sit on, and they're much more comfortable to lean back and sit with them giving you back support. Also, they'll keep the waves out of the cockpit better.
Well, that's important. But wasn't the boat originally equipped with ballast tanks?
Yeah, the boat was, when Eric had the boat designed, he designed it to be a double-handed ocean racing boat and a fast cruising boat. So it has a full interior that's very light, but it also had water ballast so that you could give you the effect of having full crew on the rail. You could put 2,000 pounds of water on each side of the boat in 2 tanks on each side. When I got the boat, I realized that the rating hit was going to be huge for that. So before we even took possession of the boat, we had the holes in the hull fiberglassed over, and we removed all the plumbing from the for moving the water from tank to tank. And since then, we have cut into the ballast tanks to turn them into storage cabinets and lockers. And there were drawers that were in front of them that were really shallow drawers that now are much deeper drawers and can hold more things.
I can imagine there are just a myriad of other changes that you've made. I've seen some of them. You talked about, lowering the profile of the winches on the deck. You also put a windlass on the bow. What else have you done sort of to put the boat in full cruising mode?
The list is pretty endless. We had to, since the boat has a plumb bow, we had to put a sprit for the anchor roller on the front of the bow so that we could pull the anchor up without the anchor damaging the boat. And then we put the windlass in. We put a crash bulkhead in the bow at the foot of the forward V-berth. There used to be a ring frame there, but we filled that all in and then put a opening hatch there. We did install finally a solid vang on the boat to save weight. The boat had a block and tackle vang, and twice the boom has come and found my noggin when it wasn't supposed to. So now we got rid of that, and we have a solid vang for safety reasons. One of the things that the boat has that we will be a unicorn in any harbor that we go to with cruising boats is the boat has a very, very tall 4-spreader carbon rig that's fractionally rigged, and it's held up with running backstays. One of the things that Rich DeMullen, a good friend of ours and somebody I've raced against and raced with for decades, suggested was moving the running backstays anchor point to the transom so that we could then tack and jibe with a single reef in the main under the runner. And with this, with shorthanded cruising, there will be a lot of times where we will be sailing with the first reef in the main because the main's huge.
That's a beautiful idea.
Yep. So, and that was a big change. We had to put new carbon fiber chain plates inside the transom to take the load of the rig.
What about electricity?
We had to upgrade the boat's electrical system, and we went with new batteries and solar panels on an arch to charge the batteries. We've also added a 2,000-watt inverter so that we can run 110 appliances, including charging our laptops and all the other things that we use that take 110 volt. And we're also adding a water maker and a hot water heater. The water maker is a really good one. It's made by Electromax, which is a company I have a lot of respect for, and it will make 10 gallons using only 10 amps of electricity.
Got it. Well, I've seen some of your conversion work firsthand, and take it from me, it's pretty impressive. But you've done a lot of work yourself, right?
Yeah, it's, as everybody knows, buying the boat is the cheapest part. Keeping it up and running it gets expensive. And if you need to have other people do all the work on your boat, you're going to pay a premium. Also, by doing the work myself, I'll learn a lot more about the systems and how they work and where to look for problems when things aren't working.
You told us that Roger Martin, the original designer, reconfigured the design of the cockpit for you. Who did the actual work?
Well, Roger just redid the cockpit coamings. So we really didn't reconfigure the cockpit. The boat's still steered with a tiller. And so that, takes up a lot of room there. But we just made the coamings taller and to give us, a little bit more comfort. But that was a big job. And so we brought the boat up to Scarano Boat Builders in Albany, New York. You wouldn't think of that as a yachting capital, and it's not. But Scarano's is a really innovative company based in Albany, New York, right on the Hudson River. It took a day and 3/4 to get there. But they do have all the design capability to design boats They can do woodwork, they can do fiberglass work, they have a CNC machine. So when Roger's design was done for the cockpit combings, Russ Wien sent the design file to them, and they plugged that into their CNC machine, and they cut out the design in a huge block of foam, and that became the mold to make the cockpit combings. So they fit perfectly.
That's great. And I can imagine you didn't do the electrical work yourself.
Nope. Jeff Udell of Custom Offshore, who I've been racing against and racing with for decades, was a good friend of mine, and he's been helping, and well, he's been doing the work.
It's all a very impressive package as it's coming together. So you've got the boat almost ready to go, but I know you're not going to sail halfway around the world and back using your racing sails. What will your offshore inventory look like?
Well, one of the things that you have to do when you go cruising is you can't bring a lot of sails, because sails take up a lot of room. So we had to minimize our inventory. So we'll carry one spinnaker. We'll carry one small code 0. It'll have about a 65% mid-girth that will fly from the sprit. It will have a Ubi Mayor furler on it so that we can roll it up. It will also have a UV cover on it so that we could leave it out there for a while. And then I did do something unique for this boat. The boat has a very, very narrow 4 triangle. And if we had a jib on a roller furler without battens, it would be too skinny for the top third of the sail when you hollowed the leech. So we decided we needed a sail with battens. And if we went with vertical battens, they were going to be 8 feet long, and that just make the sail unmanageable. So we had to have horizontal battens. If you have horizontal battens, you can't have roller furling. So we have a jib with hanks and horizontal battens so that we can have the maximum amount of roach to make the top of the sail as wide as we can. And one of our things that we did was put a horizontal reef in it so that we could then reduce sail area quickly as you can with hanks. And then we also have a number 4 Genoa if we know we're going to have prolonged heavy air for a long time that we can hang on as well. Both the jibs use a Spectra laminate with carbon load path tapes. They're X-drive sails. The main sail is going to be up all the time. It has 3 reefs, and it has to be a beast to handle everything. So we went with Hydronet radial on that with full battens.
Great. I've got 3 final questions for you, Adam. The first one is, why only halfway around the globe?
Well, my trip, the length of my trip depends on how long I can keep Jenny happy. And Jenny has no want to go anywhere where there could be pirates. And so we will stay away from the coast of Africa. We will stay away from the Strait of Malacca. And so we'll sail around the South Pacific and hopefully spend 3 years sailing around the South Pacific. I've been to Southeast Asia, and I've sailed through the Strait of Malacca, and I've sailed across the top of the Indian Ocean, and I've been up the Red Sea. So we don't have to do that again. If we do get to the Med, it means coming back through the canal and going across the Atlantic and then going to the Med. But I have a feeling by the time I get to the Med, it's going to be on an airplane and using Eurail to get around.
That's great. You're going to take Jenny with you, and I know that she's got a lot of sailing miles in her resume. But what is she looking for the most in this adventure?
I think she looks at it as Adam's great adventure, and she's going to hang in as long as she can to support me on it. I don't think it's her great goal. She is going out to sail with Paul Exner, who runs the Modern Geographic Sailing Academy out in Hawaii, to brush up her offshore skills. So she'll spend a week out there doing that. And we'll have our shakedown cruise in going up to Maine and Canada to help her get her sea legs. And the other person that's going to help get his sea legs is our cat Max, who's going to come with us. So
you're taking your cat on the boat for multiple years.
Yes, we are. Max is a member of the family. Also, Jenny doesn't want a double hand, so we'll always be taking friends with us, and making sure that for the long passages, we get people to come with us. And we've got a lot of people who are interested in doing that.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, finally, Adam, what are the 3 things that you would recommend to anybody looking to begin an extended offshore adventure such as this one?
One of the things is to find a boat that you feel comfortable in, that you know that can take more than you can handle. And that's why I look for something strong, and because I know I'm going to push the boat pretty hard because I like to go fast. But people sail around the world on all kinds of boats. There's a lot of Beneteaus and Genoas and Hansas and Catalinas out there crossing oceans. And those people, don't push it as hard. And that's fine. That's how they do. That's how they do it. That's how they're comfortable with. That's fine. My key thing that I tell people, and people tell me, is just get out there and do it before you get too old. And that's my biggest fear, is that I'm doing all this work on the boat and something's going to happen health-wise that's not going to allow me to do it. And so therefore, we really want to get going and do it. And my last thing is, don't single hand, because you need somebody who you can point to that sunset or point to the dolphin swimming and say, look at that. And that's really hard to do when you're by yourself. And then, when having somebody else out there helps you interpret what you see, helps you speak to the locals, because you have twice as many people to try to relate to the people you're meeting.
Well, that's great. Adam, thanks for sharing all of this with Lessons Learned. And anybody who wants to know more about Adam and Jenni's excellent adventure can email Adam at uksailmakers.com. And once they're underway, watch for regular updates on their passage at uksailmakers.com. So for Lessons Learned, this is Buttons Padine saying, sail with confidence.